Yeah, we got two kids. Our son Ryder's 2 years old, and Ariana's she'll be 7 in 2 weeks. I keep forgetting. Yeah, maybe in less than 2 weeks she'll be 7 years old. But here we are. Now we're live, guys. I am here with Andrew Simmons and Bart Simmons, grass-fed cattle farmers, grass-fed cattle ranchers. Um,
Cheers.
and it's an honor to be talking to these guys today. I've followed Bart over on Twitter for a little while now, and he's very well aware of kind of what's going on with the bigger picture in food production. I've got 1,000 questions for these guys, and who knows, we might have to make this a multi-part series. So, Bart and Andrew, it's an honor having you on. Thanks so much for coming on the show. How's it going today, guys?
It's going really good. It's an honor to be on your podcast today, Tristan.
Exactly.
Right on, right on. We had some audio issues, so I'm always late to my own show here on the Primal Edge Health stream. So I think we're about half an hour behind, but we finally got it rolling. We got the audio rolling. But there's a little bit of a video delay, so the audience will have to bear with us. But this is all about the conversation here. I think you guys can deal with a little video lag. So you guys are over in you guys are down in, or up rather from me, up in Texas, right?
We're in Texas. We ranch out in two different regions in Texas, Tristan. We have a ranch in the Cross Timbers, western Cross Timbers part of Texas, and also the Trans-Pecos region of Texas. So we ranch out about 80 miles due west of Dallas-Fort Worth, and we also ranch down close to the border north of Big Bend National Park. So total, we've got under ownership and control. We have 1,400 acres out in Palo Pinto County, which is in the Cross Timbers, and then we have 9,000 acres down in Pecos County. So we're relatively a small operation. You know, a lot of the ranchers ranching in Texas, you can have up to 100,000 acres. But anyway, our cattle, we stock cattle at those two ranches.
And is there a different microclimate at each ranch? They're pretty different areas?
You betcha. Yeah, one's real dry. So down in the Trans-Pecos, we get about 15 inches of rain a year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's not a lot at all. It's more of a high desert.
Yeah.
And then in the western Cross Timbers, we get about 30 inches a year. And so the stocking rate on cattle out in the Trans-Pecos, we can stock about one cow to 150 acres.
Oh, my goodness.
And then in the Cross Timbers, we can do on a wet year about one cow to 10 to 15 acres.
Okay.
Without overstressing the land. Now that's without overstressing the land.
Mm-hmm. And how do you know when the land's being overstressed? I mean, what are some of the grazing practices that you guys use out there? Because it sounds like neither area sounds like it's very wet. Neither area sounds like there's an overabundance of rain. 15 inches of rain, that's very, very little. How are you actually going about it? What are some of the practices that you guys use?
Well, what you do is you're constantly looking between, you kind of look at your stocking rate and you vary it between a dry and a wet year. So what you can do is all of a sudden when you see your grass is nubbed down to nothing, or the cattle are actually eating more forbs and browse versus grasses, then you know that you're probably overstocking. Same thing is all of a sudden you'll see the cattle maybe bite into a prickly pear. They just can't get enough grass. They can't get enough protein. They'll start eating bark off the tree.
Mm-hmm.
And so you know that the leaves, the browse and the leaves off the low trees, so you know you're probably overstocking. And so what we'll do is we'll then throttle it back. And we've been in a dry and a wet year in both those ranches, and you just kind of have to ebb and flow with it. Either what you can do is you can go try to lease more land, or we're not going to go buy more land. It's just too expensive. But if we could, we'd try to lease more land. We'll bring hay in or whatever we need. But we're real sensitive to that. We really don't like to overstress our land. So what we do is when, cattle eat about 30 pounds of dry matter a day. So if you have one animal unit, which is about 1,000-pound animal, it's going to eat 25 to 30 pounds of dry matter a day. So you've got to plan accordingly, and you've got to know you've always got enough grass out there all the time and just don't overstock.
If not, they'll be eating a lot of bark.
Yeah.
And
They're eating.
they can
stuff no
digest the
matter what.
bark?
They can. It's not great, but they'll strip it off. They're going to eat whatever they can. Cattle almost eat anything. If you're, they're pretty interesting, but they'll strip the bark off a low-lying tree if they're hungry enough.
How long you guys been ranching? How long you guys been doing this?
We've been doing this since about 2000. So
how'd you get into it?
Well, pretty interesting deal. Had always been interested in it, Tristan, and so just didn't have the money to do it. The actual, you and I talked beforehand in regards to buying land. You mentioned trying to buy land in California. It's so expensive. But I had gone out there and I had, gone out and I'd hunted in West Texas and always wanted to own some land. And so once started coming in and just started looking, driving the roads or whatnot, and ended up buying our first piece of property about in 2001 was the first piece of property we bought. Mm-hmm. And so had always wanted to do it, just didn't have the means to do it. And it just took a long time before we actually could save up enough to start buying land. And started looking for property that fit our budget and just started adding to it.
And when you first bought the land, you had the intention of ranching. You wanted to put cattle on it. Were there already cows there, or did you bring in the cattle yourselves? Or?
No, we brought them in. We always wanted to do that. So first thing we did was we brought in some steer, which are probably the easiest one to ranch. So it was not a true cow calf; it was just steer. Mm-hmm. And so what we did is brought those in, and then brought them in when they were about 700 pounds. And when they got up to about 1,000 pounds, we sold them. A little stocking operation. Mm-hmm. And so eventually we added the mama cows and started the cow-calf operation. And for years what we did is we just had a cow-calf. We'd calve in the spring, and then we'd sell our yearlings in the fall. And then at some point, we started converting over to more of a grass-fed, grass-finished operation.
So before you were finishing them on grain?
Yeah, well, what we did is we'd sell them to an auction barn, mm-hmm. and they would finish them on grain.
Okay.
So we had our cows on grass the whole time, but when they got to about the point that we weaned them off their mamas, then we would sell them at the auction. Mm-hmm. So we never fed them grain. We just would sell them to somebody else that then would finish them on grain.
Yeah, because I wanted the audience to get kind of a good idea of actually how the food production works in the U.S. I mean, I think people, they hear about grain-fed cows and they think that these are like grown in a lab and that they're just eating nothing but Monsanto corn their whole life, confined indoors, and there's just these evil slaughterhouse workers are whipping them and just, forcing corn into their mouth or something. But it seems like it's definitely not like that, right? I mean, what is the... you guys want to maybe go through kind of the typical non-grass finished beef production line that we'll see in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think about 95% of all cattle go through what they call the CAFO model, which is a central animal feeding operation. So what you usually do is you have most ranchers in America will sell their young cows when they're yearlings about 500 pounds, and they'll sell them to an operation, either a cattle company, an auction. They're put into feedlots, and what you do is you put in this, and a feedlot's nothing more than what I think the USDA actually calls a feedlot a CAFO, mm-hmm. Central Animal Feeding Operation. And so you'll crowd in, 5,000 up to 100,000 cattle, and you feed them grain. You may feed them soy, corn, just a lot of different grains. You'll also lace their food with antibiotics. Mm-hmm. And then at some point when they get close to about 1,000 pounds, you will then slaughter them. And so, for the first 6 months, they're on mama's milk and grass. And then the last 6 months to, probably 1 year, they're on grain.
Mm-hmm. So it's almost most of their life that they're actually on grain, a lot of these cows.
A lot of them are on grain, and so what they're doing is they're on grain. They're sitting there. Just all you're trying to do is get them as fat as you can, as quick as you mm-hmm. can, and that's all you want to do. You want to get that animal up to 1,000 pounds as quick as you can.
So what I've heard is a lot of people talk about, so a lot of apologists for the grass or the grain finishing say that most of these cows are on grass for 90% of their life. But it sounds like what you're saying is maybe 50% of their life. A lot of these guys are going on the grass, and then the cattle get put on the grain for a significant portion to fatten them up.
Yeah, and it's, right now they're taking them, usually on a feedlot, it's about 18 months to get them up to 1,000 pounds. So let me step back from there. So what you do is you calve in the spring. When your cows get to about 500 pounds, 500 to 600 pounds, you sell them at auction. And that a lot of times is when they're maybe 7 to 8 months old. And then you're doing whatever you can to fatten them up. You want them to gain as much weight as you can each day. And so they're probably, I'd say on grain, I don't know, 50%, but I would say easily 25%, 25 to maybe 40% of their life is on grain in a feedlot. And that's the normal American model right now.
And what was the issue with this? Why did you think it might be better to move over to a grass-finished, grass-fed production model rather than selling them at auction so young and letting them finish off on grain? What was it that made you want to transition from this, what's people for some reason call it traditional, but it doesn't seem like too traditional if you just look back a few generations? I mean, this is a new model that came about in the 70s and 80s, and it's definitely, it's kind of the Monsanto model. What made you want to move away from that and towards grass-fed?
Yeah, good point. What they did is they did the whole feedlot as a way to really scale things up. And we just were out there. We liked the whole concept of leaving them on grass their whole lives. And I had been reading about how much the grass-fed, grass-finished movement was starting to really build. And it would potentially yield ranchers a little bit more money if you would do it. Now, you had to convert your ranch over to that type of operation. And it was better for the environment, better for the ecosystem, the whole works. And we've always liked that concept. And so what we did is we said, let's convert the ranch and see if we can do this. If we can actually convert the ranch to a grass-fed, grass-finished operation, leave our cows on grass the whole time. What it did, though, Tristan, is our cows, it takes so much longer to get them up to 1,000 pounds. And so on a feedlot, it's about 16 to 18 months till they get to 1,000 pounds. On a grass-fed, grass-finished, our sweet spot is about 22 to 26 months. So we just have to, it just takes us longer to get them up to the point to where the carcass has enough trim fat and marbling to where you would like to buy our beef. I had sampled grass-fed, grass-finished steaks. I like the taste of it. It's more of a beefy, more robust taste, more of an Argentina or a Australian taste to the beef, versus a grain-fed is more of a sweet taste. Also, the nutritional profile of grass-fed, grass-finished is so much better in regards to your health. And I'd had my own certain health issues. I've had them for probably my whole life. I've got a couple of different autoimmune issues. So I was more after, let's try to experiment with this. Let's see what it does. Let's see if indeed this will help me on my journey, on my health journey. And so the hardest part is once we did that at the ranch, it was then trying to find a processor that would work with us to process our meat, that we would know that when we took our cattle to be processed, that we'd get the beef from our cattle, not somebody else.
Oh, right, because if you're bringing your grass-finished beef to a processor, you might be getting the corn-fed stuff back because they're making.
You betcha. So, yeah. So how do you, that was a process, and we had to really identify processors that would work with us because we own the title to the cow and the beef all the way through the process, but he's still got to market through that process, and we've got to know that carcass is ours. And so you've really got to build a relationship with a processor.
So you finish your cattle on grass on the ranch.
Yep.
What kind of marbling are you getting? Because I mean, when you're saying how dry it is there, when you're saying how kind of sparse the land is, I mean, you mentioned one cow per 15 acres on the the more wet area that you're running, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So you've got one head of cattle per 15 acres. I'm just comparing that to here, where you can have, one per 3 acres. Pretty,
Wow.
we've got 6 months of rain, and then so it's pretty wet. I don't know, the breeds are probably really different too. But yeah, what kind of marbling are you getting? And is there anything that you do in specific to make sure you get sufficient fat production? Because that's something I'm always thinking about. How can I get a fattier steak without, finding some corn-fed crap that I don't really want to eat? Luckily in Ecuador, there are areas where it's raining almost year-round and where you've got head-high grass growing all the time. So you do see some decent marbling in the grass-fed here. But I don't know. I'm the kind of guy where there's never enough fat for me on a steak. I'm always looking for the fattiest one with the biggest white strip.
Amen.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point and a good question. What we do is we're better to process our cattle in the late spring and early summer. During the winter, it's real tough on our cattle. Number one, the grasses are sparse. We're bringing in hay to supplement the winter grasses that we do have. But our cattle will go back on weight a lot of times. And when they're going back on weight, it's just not a good time to process. So what we're doing is, we're keeping our cows on grass the whole time. During the winter, we really throttle back how much we process. And this winter, we had a couple of different issues. We had a real wet fall, which helped us out grass-wise. But all of a sudden, we got into winter, and we just didn't have enough winter. We didn't have enough winter grasses. And our cattle started dropping back on weight. And yet we had, we'd really developed some different sales channels for our beef. We had to really work that hard. During this winter, we had a couple of different times, Andrew, where we only were processing maybe 1 or 2 cows per month. Right now, we're processing about 10 cows per month.
10 cows per month. And how many head do you have on each property? Refresh.
Yeah, we've got 100. We've got about 150 on the Palo Pinto Ranch. Yeah. Okay, we've got we've only got 25 right now on our Pecos Ranch. Okay. And part of that deal is we had droughts a couple of years ago. We had fires and droughts, and so we're just starting to restock that ranch. We hopefully will get that ranch up to about 150 also, but right now we're just feathering out cattle real careful down there.
So I'm putting in a link. I realized I didn't have a link. I'm putting in a link to your website right here. It's 2sranch.com. So if you guys want to check out their website, check out 2sranch.com. There's going to be a link in the first comment. I'll pin the comment on this video so you can check out their work. So 1 cow per month, or 1 head. How many? You said 10 per month. Is that what you said?
Right now, we're doing about 10. Per month, about 3 weeks. 3 weeks right now, we're trying to turn about 10 cow every 3 to 4 weeks.
But back in the winter, it was 1 or 2 a month.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So you're having to bring in a lot of hay. How much hay are you having to bring in during the winter, or this winter? How much?
Oh, we bring in 20 to 30 big bales, and each of those bales are pretty big, 1,000 pounds of hay. Yeah. And so and what we do too, Tristan, is we bale all of our own hay. We're not only ranchers, we're farmers. We grow all of our own hay. We don't like to buy hay. Number one, I want to know what's been put on the hay. And so, if I buy hay, I just don't know how much pesticides and herbicides may actually be in that hay. Yeah. So we're really pretty particular about it. We bale all of our own hay, and so we really put up a lot of hay throughout the year.
So why are you concerned with the quality of hay? What kind of issues are you seeing in the market there with hay quality and stuff like that? Why is it such an issue?
Well, part of my deal is we've got a lot of customers that want to be sure that everything the cow eats, it would have no to minimum pesticides or herbicides on anything that cow had ingested. We've got a lot of customers that are real particular about that. And I'm a little particular about it too. It seems that any chemical I take in, it just affects my skin. So that's just me. And so as a result, if you've got autoimmune diseases, you just want to stay away from pesticides and herbicides. If I buy hay, I just can't be guaranteed on when they may have sprayed that hay in regards to grasses before they baled it. But if I do it, we know what's on that hay. And so I like knowing everything that my cows have eaten. And that's just real important to
Yeah.
me. So as a result, what we do is we just bale all of our own hay.
So you've probably, I know you know a lot about the food production in the U.S. and you made certain decisions on how you're going to run your ranch based on the bigger picture issues. We're seeing a huge push now for like these so-called sustainable, allegedly sustainable plant-based protein options, right? Where we've got huge companies taking, GMO corn, GMO soy, and wheat, and processing them into fake burgers. We got some talk about lab-grown meat being the future, and all our meat needs to be grown by scientists in a laboratory because somehow it's unethical, unsustainable, and environmentally destructive to have cows. Now, as somebody who lives in a rural area, I know this is absolute baloney and garbage, and it actually makes my blood boil when people buy into this stuff. But what is your perspective on all this stuff? We see this kind of push for this kind of global technocratic system of food production, where everything is consolidated, and I see, the grain finished, the grain fed model for beef production as the direct outcropping of this. I mean, we didn't see feedlot animals until we saw the green revolution and then the GMO revolution that were funded by these big foundations, this generational money coming out of like the Rockefeller Foundation and stuff, who pushed the GMO revolution. So what do you think about all this fake food stuff and this talk about sustainability?
Well, I think the fake food is just a bunch of BS. The whole thing is, I'm not so sure that I don't think it's that healthy for anybody. I mean, from what I have seen is you've got these fake burgers. They're not meat. They shouldn't be called meat. They're full of seed oils, soy. They're full of chemicals that are just unhealthy for the individual, for the human body. And yet everybody's just thinking this is the best thing. And part of the deal is it's a big pushback in regards to the climate issue that everybody perceives cattle are doing to the environment. And part of the deal is there's been all this misinformation in regards to the amount of greenhouse gases cows emit. And this all goes back to some bad data that was put out by the United Nations, one of the agencies of the United Nations, I believe in 2006, 2008. Mm-hmm. But in the United States, greenhouse gas emissions from animal ag is about 2 to 3%. But yet there's this data that we can't seem to kill. Bad information that was out there saying, I want to say it was like 20%. It was even more than fossil fuels. And so a lot of the forces out there, the different forces, the vegans, a lot of the organizations that support these type of deals continue to twirl that bad information out there. And as a result, you've got all these Beyond Meat knockoff, these lab meats are now being created. I saw one the other day where I think one of these companies is going to float an IPO of about $1.2 billion on their fake meat.
That's beyond ink, yeah.
Yeah, and everybody's jumping in to hey, I want part of that investment. I want part of that investment. They see the growth in that is just massive. And yet, I'm not so sure what's really going on there. I don't think we've done enough vetting out in regards to the health issues involved with this fake meat. There's a lot of lawsuits in regards to can it even be called meat. So you've got a whole vetting deal that's not being done, and we're doing a huge pushback on small ranchers and small farmers, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it seems like this was really threatening to basically destroy what's left of the small family farm. I mean, we've seen since the 70s, since this industrial agriculture model has come about, farmers need to take out huge loans to get this heavy equipment. They're having to take out loans. They're having to sign contracts with Monsanto to buy the Roundup that's paired with the genetically modified seeds that they've been duped into growing because they think it's going to be more sustainable, or I'm sorry, it's going to give higher yields, which seems to be not really panning out in the real world too. So yeah, there's just so much deception at every level of this. It's hard to even know where to start when you're explaining these things to people because it is a full-on onslaught. And you mentioned that $1.2 billion IPO for Beyond Inc. They've already had like $500 million sunk into the company from investors like Bill Gates, who openly talks about we need to decrease the population of the world and humans are so bad for the planet. Yet, he wants to, improve reproductive health services in Africa, or whatever that means to Bill Gates. So a lot of these people, they do have motives to decrease population, while at the same time they're telling us they want to save the planet, they want to save human lives. So it's such an interesting thing. Are there many other ranchers around you guys? I mean, your property is probably in the middle of some wilderness out there in Texas. You guys got a lot of ranching families that are surrounding you?
Yeah, there's both counties that we're in, Tristan, are extremely rural. So let me give you a perspective here. So Palo Pinto County is 1,000 square miles, and it probably has a population of about 20,000. The closest village to us is Lone Camp, that has a population of 79 people. Mm-hmm. It's all ranching. Now, that's a little bit smaller ranching. Probably average size of the ranch there, is anywhere from 600 to maybe 1,500 acres. There's a couple of ranches in that area that are over, a couple of ranches up there are 15 to 20,000. Down in Pecos County, the county down there, I want to say Pecos County is about the size of maybe Connecticut, Rhode Island combined, and it has a population of about 10,000 people. Average, I think it's 2 people per square mile. Down there, the average ranch size is about 50,000 to 100,000 acres. We have 2 ranches near us. One of them is 200,000 acres. And then another one is about 250,000 that butt up against us. So these ranches are massive. And all these guys everybody's scratching their head trying to figure out what to do. Everybody has always been part of the CAFO model, where they're, calving in the spring and then they're taking the yearlings to market in the fall. But they're all trying to look at this, trying to figure out, what do we need to do now? We're seeing that, can I get a better price? Can I get something better economics if I do the grass-fed, grass-finished? Something you looped into that I want to talk about just for a second too. You'd mentioned sustainability. And, if you go out to our ranch, and I hope sometime when you're in Texas you'll come out and go to our ranches, but, you go out there and we just have a really biodiverse ranch. I mean, you'll see a lot of plants, animals. You see some wild, you can see coyotes. A lot of deer, a lot of turkey out there.
Javelinas?
A lot of javelinas.
What's a javelina?
People think it's a hog, but it's actually part of the rodent family. It looks like a hog, but it's really a large rodent.
A giant rat. Huh?
It's a giant
pretty
rat.
Scary when you think about it as a giant rat.
Yeah, I'm pretty freaked out.
Yeah. Yeah. And you got a lot of feral hogs, but you do have a lot of feral hogs. And you have a lot of different plants out there too. So you have a really diverse biodiversity. And that's part of the sustainability model. You kind of want that. You want to have that huge biodiversity. In a monocrop situation, if we're out there and all we're doing is we're raising soy and corn, you just don't have any biodiversity at all. I mean, you can walk into one of these big soy fields and I don't think you can hear a songbird for miles. It's a big difference all the way around. I mean, we can go at any given time and you'll see turkey, deer, coyote, everything out there.
Yeah, it's crazy to tell us that it's unsustainable to have animals on your land, but it is somehow sustainable to have pesticide drenched crops that are patented, of course, and you've got to buy the same seeds from the same company year in and year out. So the sustainability thing makes no sense to me, especially as somebody who lives in a rural area. Most of the meat we eat is from this valley here. I get some steaks that come from up north because they have some more fat on them too. But it's the amount of protein that you're able to produce on a small piece of land using animal husbandry is just unparalleled as far as the animal or any plant agriculture, right? To be able to actually create 1,000 pounds of usable protein and fat from plant foods takes so much processing, so much pesticide usage, and the monocropping is just destructive to the environment and soil. Whereas what you're doing, you're just grazing animals on your property,
Yep.
and it creates a more biodiverse ecosystem. They actually give back to the soil. People talk about carbon dioxide like it's this terrible thing. We need to quantify all carbon dioxide. To the audience, if you don't know, that's the stuff that your babies exhale. Carbon dioxide, that's the stuff that the UN's telling you is a toxin. But even if you were to assume that this is true, that carbon dioxide is somehow bad for the environment, which I absolutely disagree with, the amount of carbon that's sequestered by grass-fed cattle absolutely trumps any other production of food. You're saving so much and sequestering so much carbon in the soil through grazing ruminant animals. I think people forget about that. They talk about methane, right? So what is the deal with methane? Are your cows' farts out there destroying Texas? Are these animals and these deer, aren't they farting too? Aren't those deers farting as well? Are those destroying the atmosphere?
Yeah, all ruminants too. And most of the issue on the methane is really through burping. And what they're doing is methane only has a life of about 12 years. So to the extent that cows, the majority of what cows provide of greenhouse gases is through methane. And it only lives up in the atmosphere for 12 years. The fossil fuels greenhouse gas is out there for 1,000 years. But, in regards to what was sequestered back into the soil, carbon's either going to be in the soil, water, or air. And what cattle do, a good grass-fed, grass-finished operation, we're sequestering carbon back into the soil through our cattle. And that is a huge process. And what you really do is, in America, you've got the great grassland ecosystem that really goes from Canada all the way down to Mexico. And the grasslands ecosystem needs the ruminants as much as it needs the grasses. And it's a great ecosystem. They both have to be in the grass system. And what you do is you sequester all this carbon back into the soil. And a grassland ecosystem is a great way to keep the carbon, because a lot of times if you have a forest is a great sequesters a lot of carbon back into the soil, but a lot of the carbon is stored in the leaves. In a grassland ecosystem, most of it is stored down in the roots. So even if we have a fire, we have a prairie fire, we do a burn. Every now and then we'll go in there and burn some of our grasses. The roots live on grasses, and what they do is the carbon is down there in the roots, and so it's a great system.
Whereas with a forest, you burn a forest, it goes right into the atmosphere.
It goes right back into the atmosphere, and so it's a great system. But you had mentioned too that down there, you guys, you're all on grass-fed, grass-finished in Ecuador, aren't you?
Yeah, there's no CAFO system here. Now, some people, they'll supplement with some corn, they'll supplement with some grains if there's not enough grass growing in certain dry seasons. Yeah. So you see a little bit of corn-fed stuff, but there's not the CAFO system that you've got in the U.S. Like, you don't see, massive feedlots. There's some bigger dairies that they'll feed them some balanceado, they call it, which is, just kibble crap. But they usually only do that certain times of the year when it's very dry, or when they're milking the cows if they don't have a bunch of hay nearby or something to, they'll use sometimes sugar cane or some sweeter grasses to bait them in. Sometimes they'll give them the kibble stuff in those situations. But for the most part, the system down here, it's almost all grass finished, grass fed its whole life, because it doesn't make sense economically here. There's not massive, there's not incentive for the feedlots like you see in Argentina and stuff like that.
Do you, so when you buy steaks down there, do you buy directly from the ranchers?
Yeah, well, we've got farms here. What happens here is people they've got a piece of land, and you'll have some ranchers, they've got, 1,000 hectares or 100 hectares or 80 hectares. You'll see some smaller ranches and stuff, but a lot of it's just, people got a couple cows and then they'll sell it to the butcher. So it's similar to what you guys were doing. So when a cow's ready, but they don't wait till they're 1,000 pounds here. The breeds are a little bit smaller, and you're a little bit limited in kind of the breeds. You see a lot of Holstein and some Brahman. You'll see a lot of Brahman Holstein mixes. So a little bit smaller cattle here. And you go to the butcher, and the butcher has just bought it from a rancher or from just some guy who's got a few acres and had a cow on it. And they slaughter it right there. outdoors. They got like over at the butcher that we've got in town. He's just got a they walk them into town. They walk them on foot most of the time.
Wow.
And
That is awesome.
yeah, so they walk it in, and then they'll slaughter it that morning, and then you're buying fresh meat that day. So like you get the liver, and the liver is just fresh right there. You have them. They don't do cuts like you see in the U.S. though. That's the problem. Like if you were to say, give me like a nice primal, keep the fat on it. They're like, what are you talking about? We've got ground beef, we've got leg, we've got the lomo.
Yeah.
So they pull out the sirloin, they pull out the top sirloin, but they don't know what you're talking about when you tell them you want a T-bone or something. So you got to kind of sometimes tell them how to do special cuts. But there are butchers, especially up north near Quito, that they know what they're doing. So we've got some people that we've been talking to, trying to get like a consistent supply of some really nice fatty meat, because there's some areas where there's just head-high grass growing year-round, where it's raining almost all year, and so that's kind of how it works here. It's small family farms for the most part. You see some big dairies, like there will be some big dairy farms, but it's still not this crazy CAFO grain finished stuff. It hasn't hit here yet, fortunately.
You paint a pretty picture. It makes me want to go to Ecuador.
Yeah, you guys come down and visit sometime. It's we're trying to get our own. We've got a piece of land that we're building our house on, and we're gonna try to get a few dairy cows up there. It's not really enough for a bunch of beef production, so we're gonna have some. We had some cows up there that we got rid of. Kind of came with the land when we bought it, and they were overgrazing, so we got rid of those. We're gonna get like 2 milk cows and just get some decent milk production. But I've been thinking about it, how fun it would be, because there's some areas like an hour away from here where we live, where, like I said, head high grass year round. So I was thinking about maybe eventually, if I got some money, of investing in some beef production for the family. That's maybe an hour or so away. Take a drive out there once a week, and put some steers out there and see what happens.
You mentioned that less than 1,000 pounds animal unit. So how big are the cattle when they process them?
And are they still on mother's milk?
No, they wait till they're like 3 to 4 years old.
Okay.
And they're still not that fatty if you get it in the wrong season, right? So if you get in the dry season, it's still not that fatty. So I'll get a lot of bone marrow. That's one of the nice things. In Latin American countries, you can get things like meaty bones for $1 a pound. So I'll get bone marrow, and I'll kind of supplement the fat with that. And I'll get the suet. I always try to get the suet, and I'll cut up some suet and cook it next to the steaks. And but there are some producers up north who they sell their steaks in the supermarket that are really nice and fatty, and that's because they just have the butchers know what they're doing, and they're not trimming the fat, and just the grass production up there is much better. So we kind of the meat that we get here in town is great, especially for dogs and stuff. But they don't get the cuts right. They don't know how to do a ribeye. They don't know how to do a porterhouse really, and they like to pull out the sirloins and stuff. So it kind of ruins it for us. So we like to get some of the steaks that are from up north. Those are much better. So we're trying to get a supply line for that, because we eat a lot of steaks. You guys have probably seen.
Yeah. Well, I read your deal about tallow, about rendering tallow, and I thought that was pretty interesting, particularly in light of getting the fat around the suet and whatnot. And it's pretty interesting. The deal here, we're now seeing a lot of restaurants and consumers wanting to buy straight from the rancher. I mean, that is more and more people say, I want to buy straight
They're
from
in
the
the chat
rancher.
right now. They're like, how do I get meat from these guys? Like, how do we get that? And that's why I want to have guys like you on, because we want to be able to connect people with true local sustainable stuff, right? It's like we affiliate with Butcher Box, but we found out, soon after affiliating with them, that a lot of their beef comes from Australia. And it's just not something I can support. It's like Australian beef ain't local. We want to be able to connect people with real local producers. I mean, if they're not in Texas, even I don't care if they're in, if they're in Florida or something, if they can connect with the rancher and get it directly from them. Yep. That's always more sustainable. No middleman. You get a better price. You guys get the money you deserve for the work you're putting in. So, yeah.
Well, what's real tough on that is, I think the big four processors control 81% of all processing. So the issue in the United States is, I've got a couple of buddies like in Mississippi, there's not a lot of places you can independently process. So there's a lot of ranchers out there that truly want to sell direct, but in the United States, if you sell across the state line, then you got to have it inspected by the USDA. If you want to sell it in state, you have to have it inspected by that particular state's health services, and they got all these laws and stuff, Tristan, that makes it so hard for small ranchers wanting to go direct. You got to work with the processor. Then you've got to have a venue, a sales outlet to sell it. And the whole time the consumers are wanting it. In the United States, the model here is good restaurants and stores now, all they do is buy boxed meat. So they're buying box cut steaks. Very few people butcher like they used to.
I know.
I mean, most grocery stores are buying boxed meat. Most restaurants buy boxed meat. And so what we've been really trying to develop is sales channels where they would want the nose to tail approach. And we've got restaurants now, these scratch kitchen restaurants, and they truly want a primal. So we delivered one today. In fact, right before we got on with you, we had a little bit of delivery to a really good restaurant here in town, and he buys a sirloin primal from us, which is about 90 pounds,
90
on the bone. And he does his own butchering. He cuts it, butchers it, the whole
See,
works.
that's what I think the best thing is. People can get a primal if they got enough space in the freezer, and they spend a few hours learn. I mean, you can learn on YouTube, folks, how to cut up a primal, how to really do this stuff at home. It's not that hard. I mean, this is the best way to go for both the seller and the consumer. Yeah,
it really is. And it's just working with the processor, the rancher. You buy it from the rancher, then how can he get it to you quick enough? It's an experience right now, but we're seeing so much interest here in the States of people wanting meat straight from a rancher. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and who are these big four, the big four processing companies? I know Cargill is like the top one, right? Which is, also owns over 50% of the grain market worldwide is owned by Cargill. A lot of people don't realize this. Cargill heavily involved in setting U.S. policies, in getting policies like you mentioned, which make it really difficult for small family farms to succeed, survive, and sell their products. You're looking at massive corporate interests, NGOs involved in setting up this red tape and cutting us off from the ability to do that. So actually working with guys like Bart and Andrew, working with these small family ranchers and directly getting your meat from them, this is a way that you can directly battle this dehumanizing technocratic food model that's consolidating and destroying our food supply. So how
can I hop in there and say that's why we've set up the Provision House. That's the retail store and food hub through which we distribute 2S meat. And we're trying to create a venue for not only us, the 2S Ranch, but other local ranchers to sell meat through that as well. So currently we only source beef from the 2S, but the hope would be that as we grow, we will provide a venue for other small local farmers. Because if you're a small local farmer, you're out ranching all week, and then you got to truck in on a Saturday and sell all Saturday at some farmer's market on top of going through all the red tape and processes. I mean, it just becomes overwhelming at some point trying to manage all that and break even and, put food on the table for your family. So that's why we're trying to, provide a venue for that with the Provision House, which is kind of our sales channel and marketing.
That's amazing. Is that a separate website from 2sranch.com?
Yeah, you can do the provisionhouse.com. And we're set up as a USDA food hub, but we have a store here in Dallas where people can come in and buy, or you can order and we ship out from the back of our retail store. We have a distribution hub where we ship out of. So
okay, and that's the Provision House, theprovisionhouse.com.
Yeah, theprovisionhouse.com.
All right, so I'm going to put a link here. You'll see a link in the pinned comment on this video, guys, for the provisionhouse.com as well as 2sranch.com. So people can go.
So you'll see, similar to the butcher box, we have, the steak box, the beef box, the chicken and beef box, trying to provide something similar to the butcher box, but it's all sourced at our ranch in Texas.
So you guys aren't bringing in beef from, what is one of the issues? I know I've talked to a few grass-fed producers, and they don't really like this whole Australian beef import thing. They've mentioned, somebody in particular mentioned that we're not allowed to export beef to Australia. They don't allow beef imports, yet they're exporting so much beef to here and kind of undercutting a lot of the producers here. What's going on with this kind of international beef trade, and how does this affect small family ranchers in the U.S.?
Well, great point. What they did is back in 2015, before 2015, there was the country of origin label law in the United States. So Tristan, every piece of beef you bought would have a country of origin on the label. Okay, so you would know it's produced in the United States. Well, Congress repealed that in December of 2015. And after that, the big processors that you and I were talking about earlier, which is Cargill, Tyson, JBS, and I think it's U.S. Cattle Packing.
And Tyson and Cargill, these are some of the biggest pushers of plant-based fake meats too. So they're trying to literally cut out the middleman. They see you as a middleman between them and their profits. They're trying to cut you out.
Yeah. And what they do is they had kind of behind the scenes lobby to get the repeal of the country of origin label law, because what they were able to do then is bring in cheaper imports, particularly from Canada and Mexico. So they brought in cheaper meat. And what this does is this displaces the small rancher. And the small rancher now is getting less per pound for his cattle. And in fact, there's a new lawsuit that I think it's being filed out in California, where they're looking at cattlemen who may have gotten in the shorts from the big processors. And so they're bringing in all this beef into the United States. And the United States is one of the largest beef producers ever. Now, what we're doing is we're taking our beef and taking it over to China on the macro level. We're not doing it at the 2S Ranch. Right. What we're doing is we're saying the consumers here want good grass-fed, grass-finished domestic beef. And but what's really hurt us is this country of origin label law repeal that happened back in 2015. And since then, people come in and all of a sudden they're going, I want to know that my beef was produced in the United States, but you wouldn't know it otherwise. You go to the grocery store, you have no idea where that beef came from. And that's an issue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and then also when you look at like Brazil, for instance, the amount of GMO crops that are grown there, Argentina is another one of these kind of hotbeds for GMO production. Who knows what the standards are for the pesticide usage on a lot of these crops. And it's something that really concerns me is what the heck else is going to be in these animals that you're eating. We know that that glyphosate can bioaccumulate in collagen tissue. And a lot of collagen products that are non-grass fed have been tested to have significant amounts of glyphosate in them as well. So I think this is something for people to consider. It's not just, if you can only afford the stuff from Costco and that's what's in your town and that's what you can afford and you get your health back from that, I got no problem with it. But as far as the bigger picture goes, I'm all about focusing on, local food production, buying it directly from ranchers, cutting out the middleman like Cargill, who actually is trying to cut out, your ability to actually access these foods at all. In Tyson Foods, for instance, this is just one of the most hilarious things to me. You get these vegan activists talking about the factory farming system. It's so terrible. It's so bad. Then they're praising Beyond Inc., this $1.2 billion company started by big investors like Tyson Foods, like Bill Gates, like you got the Saudi princes, Saudi royalty involved in this stuff too, that are investing billions of dollars into pushing this crap. Those are the people who started the factory farming system. Tyson Foods is responsible for the factory farming system that then gets used as a straw man to just basically attack family farmers like yourselves. Right, like you guys are in no way involved in this factory farming system. Maybe you used to sell your animals and then they go to the CAFO operations. But most ranchers, it seems like you guys are just trying to get by. Like you guys aren't. Obviously, you're not abusing these animals, trying to stuff them full of antibiotics as much as you can. It seems like what you're doing is the complete opposite of that.
You betcha. Well, if you're the CAFO model, you've gotta, if you crowd 100,000 cattle in a feedlot or 50,000, you've got to lace their feed with antibiotics. Mm-hmm. It's like putting 100,000 individuals together. They're going to get sick. So what happens is they lace the food with antibiotics. And part of the deal too is if you feed cattle antibiotics, they gain weight faster too. So part of their model is they're saying, well, it's prevented from getting them sick. And all you're doing is you're trying to get these cattle across the finish line without being too sick. Yeah. So that they can get inspected. But in the same token, they're gaining a lot of weight. And again, that just kind of galls me to no end. Our animals, we treat our animals like show animals. Trust in our animals, our cattle are our best assets. And so our cattle have the straightest backs, their coats are shiny. We take great pride in our cattle. And if you see a healthy cattle, that's going to be great beef. Mm. That is huge to us. I mean, there's a picture right there. You can see our cattle right there in Palo Pinto.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
We're real proud of it.
What's up with this piece of land right here? It almost looks like you put this grass Here, did you sow this grass in, the specific type of grass? It looks soft.
Yeah, that's probably some of our winter grass right there. That looks more of one of our winter grasses. We usually put in a winter wheat before it grains up, and we'll graze them out on our winter wheat before it grains up. And that's that grass, we have to seed that every year to get it to come in, and that really supplements or gets our cattle where you want to be fresh grass. We prefer them not to be on hay. So what we do is we filled up a lot of our fields with that winter wheat right there. We graze them out on that. We rotate them off, put them back in on that. And what it does is it allows our cattle to gain weight during the winter. Now, if indeed we don't have a good winter wheat crop, then what it does is our cattle kind of go back in weight, which is tough. But just like humans, you want it to be on fresh grass. Some of that right there, that's probably a little winter wheat too. We do have a couple of hybrid grasses, Tristan. So what we do is we will put in a Sudan. We have a Klein grass, and we have some coastal. Our native Texas grasses are like Big Blue, Little Blue, Sawdust Grama, Switch, and the Indian grass. And those are the native grasses that we also have at the ranch.
I see about 6 different grasses just in this photo here.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different grasses, and cattle are real sensitive. What they do is their nose is real sensitive. They're gonna when they're going around, they're not eating all grasses. They're eating the grasses with the most nutrient content. And so you think they're grazing around, you think they're eating everything, but they're going to those bunch grasses and the hybrid grasses that Texas A&M that we have. Texas A&M has improved, like a coastal or a Sudan.
It's interesting. They kind of eat like us, It's like when we're looking at the meat, we're looking for the part with the best fat. We're looking at we're looking at the flavors. Especially if you eat a lot of meat, you know what you're looking for, and you get a good steak. I know I've never really had a ribeye I didn't like or a T-bone I didn't like, but the fattier the better. It seems like they're the same. They're looking for that grass that's just so nutrient dense and it's full of goodness, and they turn it into fat.
Cattle. Yeah, cattle are about 80% grass. They eat 10% forage and 10% browse. So, they will take some browse, some twigs, some acorns and whatnot, just natural acorns, and they'll do also some forbs, which are weeds. But for the most part, they are 80% grasses. We also have other ruminants down in Pecos, Tristan. We have elk down there. And so our ecosystem down there in the Glass Mountains is real fragile. We work with the biologist down there, and she said, we've got to harvest about 10 to 15 elk a year so that we don't damage our ecosystem. Now, elk are not like deer. Elk have a profile where they do is about 60% grass, 20% forage, and 20% browse.
Do they leave the roots?
And
do they eat the roots of the grass?
Yeah, they will. They're if they have to overfeed, they'll grub it down to where that grass may die. But elk move around a whole lot, and we don't have a high fence down there. They're moving throughout the whole mountain region. But the elk meat tastes somewhat similar to beef. It's not that odd taste like deer, like deer. Elk meat tastes so good. It's it's a little more gamey than beef. But the profile of what they eat is real similar to beef.
What about the fat? What about the fat on the elk? How much fat is there in some elk?
There can be a lot of fat on the elk. It depends. If we shoot a bull when he is bugling and they're worn down from working the bugle, the mating time, well, that bull can be kind of stringy. He's working it pretty hard. So if you go down there and you kill one of our bull elks after the bugling season, like probably in December, there's not a lot of fat on him. In fact, he's basically antlers and a penis.
Yeah.
That's
that literally one thing on his mind that whole season, huh?
Yeah.
Wow, that's funny.
So that's all he wants to do. He's out there to mate, to spread his genes.
So the best fat on that elk might just be in the balls, which actually, testicles actually are a pretty delicious fat source. I didn't realize that till recently. I actually really like testicles, or at least bull testicles. I've never tried elk testicles. So how many elk do you harvest a year?
What we do is we do a census every 5 years, and on the census, like I said, we don't have them. They're not fenced in. They're just roaming the mountain range. But this last time we had a biologist come in to do a flyover, and they said you need to harvest about 10 to 15 elk off the ranch in order to get it to where they're not over. You're not going to do damage to the ecosystem.
Yeah.
So we can go out there and we'll see over 100 elk at any given time out on the ranch. And so what we do is this last year we pulled off 4 bulls and we pulled off 8 females.
Nice.
And we'll do the same thing this next year. Now we can't sell that meat. Since we shoot it, we don't inspect it. In Texas, since we don't inspect it, we can't sell it. What we usually do is we just give it to our beef customers.
And what a trip that you can't be I mean, I'm just thinking of California, right? So Northern California, the deer are like rats. They're everywhere. There's nobody's hunting them. There's no control over the population of them. They run in front of cars and they get people killed regularly. And it's just crazy. You know, people talk about it's unsustainable to eat meat, and yet it's illegal to use some of the most efficient and delicious meat sources that are just right in front of your eyes, especially in a state like California when people are so against hunting, where there's ridiculous environmental laws that actually are counterintuitive to environmental protection. It's crazy to me. So, but you guys give your elk meat away?
We give it away. What we do is we give it away to our beef customers that come in. Well, what we usually do is we have our elk meat made into backstrap, sausage, ground meat, and brats. And so when people come in, we'll just say, hey, would you like some of our elk meat? And usually we get takers on it. Everybody likes the elk meat. But we can't, by law, we cannot sell it.
Yeah. So you can't throw it in a box, and you don't put it in your boxes. You just, to walk-in customers, you hook them up.
Yeah, walk-in customers, they can, if they want any elk meat, we've got it. In fact, we have a customer here right now. She just walked in a few minutes ago, and she may want some elk meat. And if she does, Patty will get her some.
There you go. Look at Patty's. She's smiling over there.
Oh,
that's
yeah,
great.
Yeah, she's going, okay, yeah.
That's great. Oh man. You guys are selling me on taking a visit out to Texas. I got some old family out there.
Come get you some elk meat.
Come give me some elk meat. You guys get maybe some elk marrow or something. That's I love marrow. So you talk about promoting nose to tail eating. How you guys promote nose to tail. You guys sell nose to tail, and so people are actually able to get these other things like liver, kidney, heart. Are they able to get that from you guys?
Oh yeah, we got it all, everything.
We do the tallow. We have the tallow. We render. Well, we have somebody render it for us, Tristan. And then but we also have some people just want the raw fat off the kidney.
Yeah.
And then also every organ meat, and then we have
we got 2 cow heads in the freezer right now.
We got some people that want the barbacoa, the whole. So they'll buy the whole cow head, the cheek meat. Then we also sell heart, kidney, liver, the cheek meat. We also sell
oxtail. We got it all.
A lot of oxtail. And then we sell boxes of bones. We've got a couple of restaurants here that buy our bones, and they like to make their own stock. So we've got a pretty good, robust grass-fed, grass-finished bone business.
I'm checking out your guys' shop right here. You're making me hungry.
Come on, baby. You need to come on up.
I know, right? You guys have to make a trip down here to Ecuador sometime too. Once we finish our house, you guys come down. You guys come down. See how it works down here. It's a different world. It's probably a cattle rancher's dream if if you don't mind a totally different culture. But it's
walking the steer right into town and having it butchered right there sounds incredible.
Yeah, it's funny.
I like Tristan's deal saying I love his deal about the stocking rate of 1 cow to 3 acres.
Yeah, that's
great.
Depending on the area you're in, right? So here we get 6 months of rain, right? So it's not such a big deal. Here maybe on our land, maybe 1 per 5 acres if it's it's a milk cow and you don't have to ever graze them on another piece of property. I got a friend who's got I don't know how many hectares he's got over there, but he's got a bunch of goats on a pretty small piece of land. It's definitely different than your sparse Texas land out there, and a little less humidity up in the Andes too. A little bit cooler climate here, which I like. Now you guys got cheek meat, kidney, tongue, heart, liver. You guys got it all.
Yep, the tongue is real popular. We're getting a lot more people interested in the tongue, the heart, the kidney, the cheek meat, the barbacoa, the full cow head, then the primals. Like I said, we've got a couple of restaurants now that are saying, hey, we're doing a pushback on the box meat. We truly want a primal delivery. Mm-hmm. And these restaurants are hot places now to really A lot of people like that. Then
and that's the fun part about, running it the way we do is if someone comes in and they want a cut that we don't have, we'll make it work. We'll work with them and say, hey, we'll get with our processor and make it work for you. So it's fun.
I'm seeing you guys got beef tallow. You guys got everything. This is so cool. And it's all your own animals. It's all your own stuff. People know exactly what they're getting. They know where it's coming from.
Yeah. The beef is all from our ranch. That's the 2S ranch. Yeah. The eggs are from our nephew's farm. And what they do is they have pasture-raised chickens. And then we also have another chicken operation, Windy Meadows, that provides us with chicken, and again, full pasture raised.
Yeah. It's all like within 50 to 100 miles from the Metroplex.
Yeah.
So
then our pork right there, and our pork is actually from good friends of ours, Tracy and Gary McCoy, and what they do is they've got Wattle and Berkshire hogs, and best pork in the world, and they got about 6 to 8 hogs that we buy, and it's in our store. And again, that goes down to the food hub where these other ranchers and operations are just too small, and they're just trying to find a venue to sell, and so we sell their meat. But all the beef is from our ranch, is the 2S, and the 2S owns the provision.
Yeah, see, this is what's so cool about what you guys are doing. I mean, you're creating a hub where other producers can bring their their high quality food to and get it directly to the customers without 4 middlemen in between. Because I mean, if you go into Whole Foods or something like that, so say someone's getting grass-fed beef and they're going to Whole Foods. What kind of a production line are you looking at when somebody's not, like somebody's walking into your store right now? People are walking in and out. They get to talk to you. They know exactly where it comes from. What's the difference between this and then going to a place like Whole Foods, which is owned by Amazon, in case people don't know? Jeff Bezos of Amazon does own Whole Foods. What the heck's the difference here?
A huge difference. In fact, bring up a good point. One day I was in Whole Foods. What we'll do is we'll go over there and I'll look at their meat, see their pricing and whatnot, and they had some beef out there in their freezer, and it showed grass-fed, grass-finished. And I asked the butcher, I said, hey, how do you know that's grass-fed, grass-finished? And he goes, well, it says it on the box. And I said, well, it doesn't look grass-fed, grass-finished to me. Your fat is about as white as my shirt. I said, and if it was grass-fed, grass-finished, you'd have a lot of beta-carotene in that fat. And he goes, it says it on the box. That's all he knew. And so it's institutional meat. That's what it is. You don't get to talk to any rancher, whatnot. Now, they do have a pretty good animal wellness program, but and I don't even know how they verify all that, but somebody comes in like the lady that just left. We know her. She comes in. A lot of times they want to talk to us about our processes. They want to know about our grasses. We'll sit down and have a shiner and talk to them for 20 minutes about our beef and how we do it. It's a real more intimate, personal relationship.
I'll have to peel Dad away from a few conversations. He'll get to talking for a couple hours. I'm like, hey, stop talking. I get some work done around here. I mean, it's like, do you trust the big institutional, big business that take their word for it, or come meet me, look me in the eye, and take my word for it? Come see the ranch. It's not 50 miles away. I think that's what's so cool. And here's our pork supplier. I'd love you to meet them. They're just down the road. Just trying to connect the producer to the market is very fun and rewarding about what we do.
Hey, pretty interesting too. Andrew's been working this angle too. The CrossFit operation, a lot of the CrossFit operations, they really want good protein. And so tell me a little bit about what we're doing with CrossFit.
So we've just targeted one, and we put together a bundle of goods for them from all of our product lines, the chicken, beef, pork, and eggs. And, they're really into having whole, clean foods. So we put together a little package for one of them, and we're sourcing 10 of those kind of boxes of bundles of goods to them a week right now. And once we feel good about that, we'll move on to the next CrossFit and try and grow that way. And again, it's just another great market that we can provide to all the local ranchers around here. So the more that we're successful, the hope is the more we can help other local producers to have an outlet for their products.
And CrossFit was real particular. They wanted directly from the rancher. They didn't want to go buy it from Whole Foods because they know it's institutional.
Yeah. Who knows the supply line, right? I mean, so you can't control it. You have no idea what. And on top of that, every single person's tacking on a little bit of. Everyone's tacking on a few bucks per pound in between the producer and you. So I mean, it seems like if
Yep.
you're going directly to the rancher, you're definitely going to be getting they're going to be getting a superior product, very likely, that you can trust. But then also you're going to be getting a better price, and the rancher is going to be making the money that they deserve for all the work they put into it.
We connected with some big ranches way out west, and that's one of the things they've said is that okay, we've tried to go through the venues to sell into Whole Foods or whatever, but they're capturing all the margins. The middle guy's getting all the money, and the rancher's just getting pushed
because
down.
they have the big investors and they can throw down for it, right? They have a lot of money to invest in this stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. People don't realize just how twisted the food supply gets, and what a windy road.
It's a dogfight,
Mm,
man.
absolutely. And you guys are fighting it. And you guys are having fun fighting it.
It's a food fight. It's a meat fight, and it's a pretty interesting one. The rancher is taking all the risk. He's got the weather risk. He's got the production risk. He needs to put majority of that money in his pocket, and all the middlemen have all taken their slice, and it just makes it so hard. And you get so far removed from the consumer, and the consumer now says, "I want it straight from the guy." That's why these farmer market movements are so big right now.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many regulations right now, even on a farmer's market, on license and how you've got to be able to sell it. Right now, we work with 2 farmers markets, and even that's complicated.
Exactly.
I mean,
there's always some paperwork trail or something else to work through. But
yeah, it's pretty obnoxious, right? And that would kind of keep most people
It
away.
really
It's
is.
like you're not getting into this for the money. No one's getting into grass-fed beef because they're trying to get rich, right? It seems like this has got to be something that somebody loves, or they're going to easily get pushed out. Because I mean, it's like you said, it's a dogfight, and there are big money interests with long-term plans and big economic leverage, and they swing a big stick, and they're willing to kind of cut some corners and push out guys like you. But yeah, I'm really glad that you're doing what you're doing. Now, what do you think about? So a friend of mine asked. He wanted me to ask you this. He wanted to ask about what about grain finishing with the non-industrial model, right? Say you were to maybe grow some of your own corn, your own soybeans that are non-GMO, not patented, not genetically modified, and spray with a bunch of glyphosate. What do you think about maybe finishing off an animal on some of that grain for a little bit, fattening it up, giving the consumer a little bit of fat in a non-grass finish, but also still local, still non-industrial way? Is that possible? Are people doing that? And have you ever thought about it yourself?
we know we've connected with one ranch. We've thought about supplying them. They're not getting those cows are not getting antibiotic laced feed. And then if we did sell their cow, that burger, it will be from one cow, won't be made up of 100 cows. And then it's still pasture raised. It's walking around, it's moving around. It's not stuck in a confined environment, sneezing on another cow. So it's still a much superior, healthier product with some grain laced in, but we've thought about carrying that in our store. It's a pasture raised, grain finished product, maybe 10% grain finished, as opposed to maybe a 40 or 50% from a CAFO.
To me, it seems like a way that you could increase the fat content without destroying the integrity of the product. But I guess
exactly,
maybe as far as the consumer's knowledge of these things goes, it's either grass-fed, grass-finished, or you should be labeled absolute poison. I'm not saying that that's how I believe it is. I think there's a lot of gray areas with some of this stuff, but maybe there's not much of a market for that.
No, I think there's a good market. I think you're going to see the market for beef get more diversified. I think you're going to see grass-fed, grass-finished. You're going to see a 90% grass, 10% grain finished. I think you're going to see all that, and consumers want it, and that'll change the taste of the beef up a little bit. So you may get a little more of a sweeter taste if you finish them out on corn, that last 10% on corn. So you're going to have some consumers. In fact, we went out to dinner with some friends, and that said, look, I was brought up in the Midwest. I like a corn-finished steak, corn-finished cow that produces a corn-finished steak. That's how they like it, and that's what you were brought up with. So I think you got to go with what the consumer wants. Again, like Andrew said, it's good for the cows. It's a great model. It's a lot better than the CAFO model.
Yeah.
And I think you could easily do that. In fact, you could finish them out on corn. You could finish them out on soybean or mixture. And you're going to have consumers that say, you know what, I really like the grass finished model, but I really want it finished on grain.
And it's still ticking off a lot of the health boxes, that you would want to see ticked off. It's still a very, they're not using herbicides or pesticides on the grasses, no antibiotic-laced feed. So there's still a lot of great things about that product.
Yeah, I'm into it. I think it's a great idea. Hey, the more fat, the better. And if it's, if you can fatten it up without giving it the CAFO model and, giving it the GMO crap and contaminating with glyphosate, then I'm into it. Because, like I said before, a lot of the meat in my direct area is pretty lean, but when you get it from some of the outlying valleys, it gets fattier and fattier. And
well, Dad, tell them about the mother's milk,
the what?
The fatted calf deal we're thinking about.
Yeah, we've got one deal right now. So we've got some cows, and a lot of times what you do, Tristan, is, and you probably know this, we leave the cow on the calf on the mama, and a lot of times after the calf's been, the mama's had the calf, the heifer's had the calf. About a month after she's had it, we put the bulls on the mama, and so she ends up getting pregnant while she's still nursing that other calf. Well, we've got about 10 cows right now, 10 heifers, that we didn't put the bulls back on them while they were still nursing this young calf. So these calves are big. These calves are like 700 pounds. They're still going up and hitting the udder. Mm-hmm. They're getting milk, but they're also eating a lot of grass, okay? So these cows are truly the fatted calf. Yeah. They're out on pasture, and what we're going to do is we're letting them get to about 900 pounds. Wow. And they're still going up and the mama doesn't care, she'll let them go up there and hit her udder, but she's not being drawn down. She's not sitting there, 8 months pregnant either. And so you get the true fatted calf. And back in the day, this is the calf that the rancher families would butcher. This is the best one. So we've got some chefs right now that are very interested in buying our fatted calves. And these calves are going to the meat will be unbelievable.
They're on a mother's milk grass mixed diet.
Yeah, I heard that results in kind of a sweeter meat too.
It's a sweeter meat. It's the best. It's tender. It's so laden with fat. It will be dynamite.
That's so exciting. Yeah, that sounds really, really good. Yeah, I want to see some of the marbling on those ones. You guys, do you notice that different breeds? You use different breeds in different areas for the microclimates, or because something I've seen here is the fat color will be dependent on breed. It will be dependent on the types of grass it's grazing on. There's several different factors there. It's like there was one time recently a castrated bull that somebody had slaughtered, and it had so much more fat than even some of the heifers that I had seen recently. So this castrated bull, I guess maybe because of the lack of testosterone, it got nice and fat, like many Americans we all may know. So what do you notice as far as like practices, breeds, feed and whatnot affecting fat quality, taste and whatnot?
Sure, that's a great question. And in the Cross Timbers region, we use more of an Angus and a Hereford model. Those are the two breeds that do really good. Down in Pecos, where it's a lot drier, and where the cattle have just got to find a lot of different protein sources, we use a Beefmaster with a slight Angus cross in it. The Beefmaster in a rougher climate seems to do better down there. So the breeds make a big difference for us. That makes a big difference. In regards to their diet, it makes a big difference. If I finish them out if I gave them alfalfa, that'd be a big difference. We don't have alfalfa here, but a lot of times I've heard some ranchers north of here, up in Oklahoma and Kansas, they'll finish them out on alfalfa, and that'll make a big difference in the profile of the meat and the fat. So I think all that goes into a big effect. The breed, the water, the grasses you finish them out on, and two, whether it's a steer or a heifer makes a big difference on that fat content. Most of ours, if we finish them out on grasses, our fat here is pretty much yellow. Mm-hmm. It's like a light yellow to, we'll have some that will be more of a dark yellow. You can tell, you can kind of look at it and tell that it's been grass finished versus in a feedlot. If I go to a Whole Food and I go up and down their aisle, I can tell their fat is about as white as my shirt. and most of that's been all feedlot
You know
beef.
what is funny? I notice here is we get a lot. I mean, you see the suet, and sometimes it's white, sometimes it's like orange, and it seems that there's a big correspondence between the breed and the types of grass
Huh,
too.
interesting.
Because I do see there's a lot of white fat here where they're not
Yeah,
getting any of the grain at all. There was even that
okay.
one I told you about. There was a castrated bull that had the most yellow fat that I've ever seen. And I asked the butcher, I said, "Why do you think it gets so orange like this?" It was almost neon. Like it looked like radioactive or something. It was weird. And even the marrow was this really deep orange color as well. And he said, first of all, castrated bull, but then also depending on what the animal is eating. He said this one came from way up in the mountains. It was eating, I don't forget what kind of grass he said, but a lot of weird wild herbs and stuff too. So it's a funny thing. There just seems to be so many little factors that affect the health of the animal and the fat production. Now, what about like age? You mentioned, most people are slaughtering it like a year and a half old. Um, if you let them go further, might it develop a little bit more fat, or is it does age depend, or does the fat content and the quality of the meat depend on age as well?
You betcha. So our sweet spot is 22 to 26 months. At that point, I get our cattle up to about 1,000 pounds. They've got enough trim, fat, and marbling that it does make a big difference. Uh, Usually in the United States, there's some laws that you can't let them go past 3 years in regards to selling some of that meat.
Mm.
Uh, so there's some specific laws out there. Feedlot beef, it's anywhere from 16 to 18 months where they've gotten them fat enough to where they can do. Cattle have gained anywhere from 2 to 4 pounds a day. So if on a feedlot, on grass, it just takes a little bit longer for us to get it to where we know that our cattle are going to have enough fat, and the fat's what gives it the flavor. You got to have that flavor, that fat, that trim fat, and that marbling in there. And then also, too, how we work with our processor to age our beef. If we age it 14 to 21 days, that makes a big difference on flavor, too, and texture.
So 3 years is a cutoff, and there's laws and more difficult to sell beef that's older than 3 years, huh?
There's some laws about that, and I am not an expert on that, but there's certain laws where you cannot, if you sell a cattle over 3 years, for the most part, it's going to go to dog food or different deals. You've got to be real careful about the age of the
Why
beef,
do you
of
think
the
they do
cow.
that? That sounds kind of strange. Because here, 3 to 4
Yeah.
years, that's pretty common. 3 to 4 year old animal.
I thought I heard at the processor last time I was there. It was over 3 years, and what did they connect it to mad cow? Was that what they
What is
said?
that?
I think that they were thinking if you sold it over a certain age, the risk of mad cow went up. Maybe I'm
Oh
wrong.
yeah,
That I
that's a
think that's
funny.
what
A
I
lot
heard
of
them
people got
say.
freaked out about that, which
Yeah.
is that's really strange. You never hear a mad cow
But I
outside
think
the
that's
U.S.
the validation for the law that they have in place. So yeah, we can't sell it if we process it over a certain
So
age.
that almost feeds into the factory farming model, or that kind of feeds into the CAFO model a little bit. There, you have more incentive to market really quick.
Fat as quick as possible. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh man, what a shame. Because I mean, it seems like maybe you let the animal graze a few years longer, and you could get a real fat animal. And I know that liver from a mature animal, from an older animal, tastes a lot better as well. Like the flavor of liver. I don't really like calf's liver. Anything under like 6 months, it just tastes too sweet, like tomato-ish or something. Whereas like a mature liver will have these nice
Oh God.
undertones of like herby tones to it that I really like.
Yeah, it's the liver is pretty interesting. We've got a lot of people coming in here now wanting calves liver. I mean, that's just a bigger and bigger demand all the way around.
Yeah. What about other organs? What are the most popular organs that people are asking for now?
It'd probably be liver would be up there. We've sold a good bit of tongue recently. People want the tongue. Hadn't sold a ton of kidney. We sold the
Yeah.
kidney fat, but it's probably liver and tongue have been the top two
What about trim
sellers.
fat? You guys sell
So
trim fat too?
No, they want the kidney fat for the most part. We have not sold any trim
Hmm.
fat as a separate deal. We do have some raw carnivores though that buy our fat and our raw
Hmm.
meat and they eat it, and that's a movement that's gaining strength too. So we've had people ask us about shipping the fat, unrendered and rendered. Most of our raw carnivores wanted unrendered fat.
Yeah, I think the unrendered fat. I mean, it just as far as consumption too. Tallow's great, for cooking it. I mean, if you're gonna cook a steak, I like using tallow instead of oils or butter or anything. But for adding fat to a meal, the kidney fat's great unrendered. What I do is I'll cook a steak, and then at the end of the meal, or actually not at the end of the meal, but after I'm done cooking the steak, I turn off the skillet and I'll take a slab of the fat and I'll just throw it on there and soften it up a little bit on each side, and kind of eat it real rare on the side of the steak. So I think, I really like the unrendered fat as opposed to the tallow. But tallow is cool because you don't even need to refrigerate it. It's a non-perishable basically. You keep it in the cupboard. And yeah.
Is steak pretty much your go-to?
I like steak. I like marrow. So I'll do. Here they'll get like ossobuco type stuff where you get them to cut it about an inch thick, and the marrow will have the meat on it. So I like that a lot. Sometimes I'll just pop the marrow out. I'll eat the marrow raw, and I like to cook a steak. I'll get a good sear on one side, and a little bit browned on one side, and then just 10 seconds or so on the other side, and cold in the middle. Pull it out of the fridge right before I cook it. So I like it. I'm kind of more into the raw / super rare, but I like the taste of cooked meat too. So I like the softened fat a bit. Get the best of both worlds. Steaks, and I like tongue, slow cooked meat. We do a lot of organs and stuff too, liver. But I'm crazy. I'll do like high liver. You guys know about that?
What's that?
Bart knows about high liver. It was rotten liver.
Raw liver.
Rotten liver.
Oh, rotten! Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So if you read The Fat of the Land, have you guys read that book? You probably like that one. The Fat of the Land by Stephenson. He was the Arctic explorer who lived with the Inuit for several years, and he actually wrote a little bit about high liver, or high meat rather, in that book. But in Iceland they'll take shark, they'll hang it up for a year, and it's called havarki, I think they call it, and that's like one of their national dishes. It's just rotten 1-year-old shark meat. But yeah, high liver. When you think about dry aging, right? You got like a 60-day dry aged steak. A lot of people are really into that. It's similar, except what I do is I use a refrigerator. So I'll just cut it up. I'll put it in a jar, leave it in the fridge, open it up every once in a while, and I'll eat it like that.
How does that affect the taste and the nutritional profile of it?
I mean, it's not like liver at all. So, normal liver, liver's cool. I like liver. I like cooked liver. I prefer liver raw. I think it tastes a lot better uncooked. It's just a little bit more sweet. Tastes real good that way. You guys' video's frozen up. Let me see if I can. You want to restart your video? You just push the camera button on the bottom, and then click that camera button on the bottom, and then click it again. We'll see if we can get the video back for you guys. Let's see if it comes. There we go. All right, now you're unfrozen.
Yeah.
You were frozen with your
technical wizard.
Yeah, there you go. You were frozen with your astonishment face when I told you I was eating the rotten liver.
Great moment.
Yeah, well, it's hard to keep telling the story when you still got the horrified face. So, so yeah, basically, I cut it up, I put it in a jar, leave it in the fridge for a couple months, and open it up, and it tastes, I don't know, man. Sauerkraut's got that kind of like tartness to it. I've had some that taste like that. I've had some that taste really spicy and herby. I've had some that tasted like red wine almost. And I did one where I had one liver from one animal the same day, 3 different jars. Every one of these jars tasted totally different after about 2 months. And they were all good, but they each had a completely different flavor profile. I don't know. It's a fermented meat. It's one of the most interesting things I've ever tasted. One of the strangest foods I've ever eaten. But I have several jars in a fridge full of the stuff, and I'm just, I'm enamored with it. I have one bite of it with each meal. It's like a digestive tonic. You know what I'm saying? Because this is an animal source probiotic when you think about it. And we've got neurotransmitters that are made in our gut from bacteria, and they call it high meat. I think because people would say they'd get like a high from it almost, it's almost like you have people have kombucha or something and they get kind of spritzy from it, not from the alcohol content, but from the bacteria. And it's a little bit like that. So I don't know, maybe that's the best way I could describe it. but I like that high meat. I think it's really good. Andrew Scarborough's in the chat. He says, just don't do high penis. No, I've not done high penis. Yeah, but testicles, I've never tried penis raw, but testicles are great fat. And actually, testicles, very, very little cooked or raw, can actually be really, really good. I don't know. You guys ever sell the testes? Probably not.
Oh yeah. Well, we hadn't sold them, but when we were the cattle, brought them up.
Yeah. So I think it's really cool that you guys are selling so many organs on there. So many people are getting into the organ meats these days. And we put organ meats in a book we put out a few years ago. And most people hadn't heard about it when we started talking about it, but now more and more folks are starting to try this stuff. More and more folks are getting interested. And it's cool that they can get it directly from somebody like you rather than having to worry about, is this going to be quality? Is this something I want to put in my body? Is this any good? So that's really cool. Now, Andrew reminded me grass-fed testicles high in DHA, which also, brain's also really high in DHA. So you got people who maybe don't like fish. They want to get the DHA in. And testicles and brain, and also, I'm pretty sure bone marrow. Those are all really good sources of that type of fat. Do you guys sell brain at all, too?
We do not.
Is that a legal thing because people are freaked out about mad cow, too? You're allowed to sell brain?
Yeah, there's certain deals about that, and I don't remember all the deal. I know some people do it. I'm not sure of the regulation there, and
I've been asked about it. You're probably the fourth or fifth person who's asked me about it. I'm gonna chase that down. I need to put that on my to-do list.
Yeah, I'm looking at it because I know that grocery stores. When I was a kid, you used to be able to go to the grocery store and get cow brain, and I remember we dissected one when I was in like third grade or something for science class. But it seems now there might be some. With all this mad cow stuff, I think there's been some scaremongering out there. What do you guys think about this mad cow, this prions concern? You guys worried about it much out there?
No. For the most part, we've got healthy cows. We know every cow on our ranch. We're not feeding our cows organs from other cows. That was the whole deal back then is, when you take the feed in these feedlot, and they were grinding up cattle and feeding that back to the cattle. And that was the whole issue. So if your cattle on grass, we just don't have that issue. So that is just not an event for us at all.
None of our cows are attacking and eating any of the other cows.
Yeah.
Oh,
that ain't happening.
Yeah, well, what a crazy thing. What a crazy thing. Now what about things like sweetbreads, stuff like that? You guys sell those much? You got people asking about that?
We have not. For the most part, they want the muscle meat. They want some of the organs we've talked about, but we haven't had any inquiries about that, not that I know
of. Sweet brain?
What was sweetbreads.
What's that? I'm still not hearing.
Like thymus and those are the organs.
I don't think we've had anybody ask about that.
No, but...
They're real fatty.
Yeah, I might look into it. I like chasing down any trails, so...
Yeah, look into sweetbreads. I mean, just maybe for your own curiosity to try. That's another one that's not a lot of people know about, but they taste real good. They're super sweet and very soft. Probably have a lot of DHA in them. They taste different than other parts. It's kind of like marrow's got its own special properties that you're not going to find elsewhere in the animal, especially the lower bone where it's real soft and gelatinous, almost buttery. That's one of my favorite too. From the lower leg, that marrow, if you put it in the fridge, and then if you pop it out of a bone, if you got like 1-inch cuts of the bone, that marrow is so soft and it's like butter almost, or creamy, and it's one of the sweetest parts of the animal. Andrew says thymus and pancreas. Is pancreas considered sweetbreads too? I didn't know that. Now people call them sweetbreads in some places. Thymus. I think pancreas is something else.
Hey, Tristan, aren't the sweetbreads real big in England?
I think so. I think that's where the word comes from. I think in England people like them.
Yeah, I do too. I think I've heard of that, but I don't think here we've ever had any demand for it. But it, could be.
I've heard a few for people asking about brain. I've never heard the sweetbreads.
Yeah. Well, you learn something new every day. You learn today that people eat rotten liver. Willingly.
Exactly.
People willingly do
High
that.
meat.
Intentionally do that. I've given it to friends who, eat normal food, not like, crazy carnivore style diets like me. And every single person I've seen eat it has enjoyed it quite a bit. The high liver. So even my son
One of these
loves
days,
it.
man, we'll head down to Ecuador. We'll slaughter a cow right there in town,
There we
and
go.
we will eat some high meat.
We'll walk a steer down from the mountains. We'll slaughter it in town, and you can show them how to actually get a proper primal. You can teach my butcher how to butcher the meat for me, because I'm always showing him pictures, and sometimes they'll bring in, it's like, man, you cut out they'll cut half of the T-bone out. What is it called? Is it the sirloin that's in the T-bone? They'll take out the sirloin of the T-bone, so you get half the T-bone. And you guys gotta come down here and give some Western butcher lessons to my local butcher. They're sweet family. It's cool here. It's really family farms, right? It's actually family butchers too. Usually they're ladies. There's a lot of women, and they have two sons. She's this lady and two of her sons that do it, and it's just like the one butcher in town. If you want meat other than on Sunday or sometimes Wednesday, you got to go to Loja, which is about 40 minutes away. But over there in the city in Loja, they bring in animals from some of the surrounding valleys, so you have more selection, right? So if you want a bunch of suet, you can go there and you can get quite a bit of suet. You can get we used to come home with 20 pounds, 30 pounds of suet and render a whole bunch of tallow for like several months worth. But yeah, it's a different world down here. It's a little Wild West. It's a little freaky to some Westerners when they see, nobody's wearing gloves or anything. Everyone's just handling meat. They handle your money and then they handle the meat. It's like, whoa, okay. It's different. People aren't worried about.
It sounds awesome.
Yeah, I like it. It's good. It's nice if you're if you're into that kind of stuff. So I'm kind of an Ecuador country boy these days. I like it out here.
There you go.
Yeah. So what do you guys drive out there on the ranch when you go out? You guys got a 4-wheeler, or what are you guys driving?
Well, we've got the trucks. We've got a 350 and a 250 Ford, 250 and 350. Then what we do is we've got like these, we call them mules. They're 4-wheel drive. They're 4-wheel little vehicles.
Like a quad?
We don't have horses. Kind of like a Can-Am or a Kawasaki. It's got a little bit of a bed on the back.
And they got like that frame around the top of it and one window in the front, but no roof. Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah,
and that's almost better. That way, then you can put whatever you need in the back of it too. So I don't do 4-wheelers. 4-wheelers are kind of dangerous, and so anyway, we use those a lot. We can get around on the ranch in Palo Pinto pretty much everywhere with our trucks. Now down in Pecos, you almost got to do a 4-wheeler, a Can-Am type vehicle, and that's what we use down there.
Nice. Well, this has been a real fun conversation, guys. I really appreciate you coming on. Maybe we should let you get back to your business. I know you had a few customers walking in while you've been talking to me, and appreciate you coming on. Where can people find your work? Where can people get in touch with you if they want to get a hold of some of your meat? And what states are you able to ship to, and how does it work for them?
So you can find us at the2sranch.com. That's the number 2, letter S, ranch.com. And then the Provision House, theprovisionhouse.com is the retail store. And we're able to ship for free throughout the southern and midwestern U.S., but we're working on what we're going to call kind of our coast-to-coast box that will be a way to ship free to the coast. The coast is just so hard because the shipping is so expensive. But you can order all over the United States. It just might cost a little bit more on the coast. But we're working on a coast-to-coast box. And then Dad, you can find him at J. Bart Simmons. That's your Twitter handle, right?
Yep, J. Bart Simmons on Twitter. And then something you had mentioned too, since we're USDA certified, we go to a processor that's USDA inspected, Tristan. Basically, we can sell our meat, like Andrew said, anywhere in the United States. It's just the shipping gets so expensive, but we're really about to do this launch on the two coasts. But anyway, give us a call or come by. We do, if you're in Dallas Fort Worth, we actually offer free delivery. So we have a lot of people that actually will go online, buy our meat. And
we've
then
had a couple come in while we've been sitting here.
So we do the delivery. We've got our meat is also in some grocery stores. The grocery stores are kind of like mom and pop grocery stores. They're kind of like the Whole Foods before Whole Foods got institutionalized.
Yeah, those are the best. That's what I always recommend. Find who's competing with Whole Foods in your area and support them.
Yeah.
Really.
Yep. Yeah, really good people. We have Ann's down in South Dallas. We have Rubel's up in North Dallas, Clear Fork out in Fort Worth, Basic in Beaumont, Texas. These are all privately owned grocery stores, kind of like what it was about 30 years ago.
Royal Blue and Cox, both in Dallas.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to have you guys come on again. We didn't even get into I wanted to ask you guys what you think about all this activism of these people invading these small family farms and these vegan activists. So I know you guys are in Texas. You're probably not going to ever have to deal with any of that. And I know you guys are probably equipped to handle whatever comes your way up there in Texas. But yeah, gentlemen, thank you so much. You guys can find the links to 2S Ranch as well as theprovisionhouse.com. Oops, I've got it pulled up. I had it pulled up there, but I forgot that I was yeah, there we go. Theprovisionhouse.com. You can see it on the screen right there. Check it out. Get directly from the ranchers with no middleman, with no with no Whole Foods, with no Jeff Bezos, no Amazon.com in between you and your beef provider. And they're working with other family farms as well. And I really hope to see you guys expand what you're doing here. And I appreciate what you do, guys. So provisionhouse.com, 2sranch.com, and I'll throw a plug out for you, for all the meatheads out there, the Carnivore Cookbook. If you're a recovering vegan or if you just want to learn how to handle meat, check out the Carnivore Cookbook, 0-carb recipes for people who really love animals. No plants harmed in the making of this book. It's all animal foods. You can find this at primaledgehealth.com. There's a link in the description below. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye, everybody.
Tristan, thank you so much.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Tristan.